I want to welcome you to the 4 o'clock work session of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners for August 20th, 2013. We've got 2 items on the agenda to discuss today. The first is the Bowling Green Riverfront Foundation presenting a report for the Whitewater Rafting Initiative and Mountain Bike Trail and Pump Track. Mr. Febo, do you have any introduction?
I do not, Mayor. I think your people here to present.
Paul, you want to?
Okay. Maybe Bill.
Actually, as a result of the stroll that we had at Weldon Peak Park back several weeks ago, Paul and I and several were discussing some items, and there were some other ideas brought up, and I thought that it might be a nice time for them to come back and refresh some of our memories and any new things that they have to offer, and thinking that how important that riverfront can be to us. And I'm not sure we're utilizing it to the best of our ability, and this may work out that it's a fit for what we need down there. So Paul, if you'll come up and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Paul Russ. I'm a co-founder of the Bowling Green Riverfront Foundation. I also serve on the Greenways Commission of Warren County and Bowling Green and Warren County. Update on the project. About 2.5 years ago, I came before you and presented all this elaborate idea about this waterfront with whitewater rafting and biking, and we got the first phase done at no cost to the taxpayer, so we're pretty excited about that. We're also pretty excited to see family and children coming back down to the park, so that's a huge win for everyone. And today we would like to focus on the second phase of what we'd like to see for Bowling Green's riverfront, and that is the bicycle pump track. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Andy Williams of the International Mountain Biking Association. Andy?
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, commissioners, for having me today. I appreciate it. As Paul mentioned, my name is Andy Williamson. I am the Great Lakes Region Director for the International Mountain Bicycling Association. I'm based out of Dayton, Ohio. My region is 5 states, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky. So my job is really to work with local organizations. I'm here on behalf of the Southwest Kentucky Mountain Bike Association, one of my chapters, and here to help you all facilitate your strategic objectives regarding national surface trails. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I hope I'll be able to answer some of your questions. I'm going to go forward with moving through the presentation. Hold it down.
Is the power green light?
And hold it
On
down.
the side. Power button on the side.
There we go. All right. So real quickly, I've got a lot to cover. I'm going to do it very fast, and a lot of it's more just pretty pictures and some data, so definitely don't hesitate to stop me, but I will probably guarantee you that I will answer a lot of your questions throughout the next 15-20 minutes. I've worked with a lot of groups and commissions throughout my region. So I want to talk a little about who IMBA is. I think it's important to lay that context first. Talk a little bit about Better Living Through Trails, which I know is exactly what this Riverfront project is all about. It's improving the quality of life, attraction and retention of young talent, getting youth and families outside, all those pieces. Get into the details of what a community bike park is and some of the potential options that y'all have for your facility down there at the riverfront, and of course answer any questions about some next steps. Personally, in my past career, I was the outdoor recreation manager at 5 Rivers Metro Parks in Dayton, Ohio, where I currently reside, a block from the river where a whitewater park is going in. And I was actually very active and engaged, and still am as a volunteer, on our committee working with the commissioners in the city of Dayton. So this project is actually quite appealing to me as it really hits right at home for me. So I'm excited to see other communities doing that. I'd love to help you out as best I can. So a little IMBA 101. Our mission, of course, is to create, enhance, protect quality riding experiences throughout the world. We have projects going on in 4 different continents right now and numerous different countries, so we really are an international organization. We have over 30,000, give or take, depending on when the membership rolls in any point in time. Really, we have 450 affiliated clubs and chapters, so our local chapter here is definitely one of them that I support as a professional. We give our constituents, our volunteers and mountain bikers, over 1 million volunteer hours a year in building trails and supporting their land management agencies and communities and giving back. We've worked with organizations and communities like yourselves to build 5,000 miles of new trails and projects since '88. One of the big things we're here to do is to work with our local chapters to empower them to be a better resource in the day that we're all aware of, where resources are getting slimmer and slimmer. Our community stakeholders need to be a better partner in helping you all achieve your mission and your strategic vision. Partnerships, why we're here, why Southwest Kimba is working with y'all is exactly what we try to preach when we work on. I was just up with Chip, the president of the local chapter, up at the National Park Service, viewing that trail. It's going to be great for the region and really grow the mountain bike community. Definitely about protecting public lands, and believe that by giving people access by a bicycle gives people another avenue, an intimate connection to protect lands, vote for it, and keep it there for future generations. And of course, we do build a lot of trails. This picture right here is actually on the bottom left. It's in New York City, believe it or not. And then, you know, the picture on the left is in top right is Pacific Northwest. We even wrote the book. We have worked with the Forest Service and numerous agencies to really create the textbook on what sustainable trail design is, and even created a book for land managers and communities on how to actually manage our user group, because we are different than other users. Coming here this winter, we're going to be putting out a publication just like this for just bike parks, the conversation we're talking about, because it's so popular. We're really trying to quantify and provide some tools and resources for communities, park districts to be able to better facilitate those projects. And we're here to help, help grow the local support, which is exactly why I'm here. So we really do believe that mountain biking and natural surface cycling has the potential to improve, be just another arrow in your quiver to improve your community. It's a very efficient use of space. It is very low impact if done correctly, and it really does get people outside connecting to the natural world, and can be facilitated in numerous scenarios. By creating sustainable natural surface trails and infrastructure, you really are reducing a lot of the environmental impact from a lot of the historical trails we have that create a lot of erosion, runoff, a lot of user conflict and things. So we really work with land management agencies to help to minimize that. When you look at, and I'm sure y'all have planned and built many of these facilities, trails and bike parks and pump tracks are a fraction of what we're spending on playgrounds and golf courses and ball fields. So we really do believe, these numbers are put out by a national organization. They could definitely vary depending on the size and where you're at geographically in the nation. But we really do believe that natural surface trails and bike parks their ROI is extremely high. Richard Florida, I'm sure y'all are familiar with his idea that we need to be, especially in this region, designing and developing our communities to attract and retain young, creative, and professional talent, because that's where the businesses are moving. People are getting doctorate degrees and moving to Portland, Oregon to flip hamburgers. Those of us in this region have to combat that. That's what we're working against. And active, healthy lifestyles, in addition to all arts and culture, active, healthy lifestyles, it's sexy. It's what that generation wants. And that's really what we're trying to help y'all meet and support when you're going after that demographic. We are a very large group. I think it's many times underestimated, but through many market research surveys, through the industry, there are a lot of us. There are more people that ride bicycles than play golf, tennis, and ski combined. Cycling is a very popular activity, and the only one bigger and brings in more money is wildlife viewing and general trail users next to cycling. So it's definitely up there in regards to the outdoor industry, both consumptive and non-consumptive. So this is why we're here, right? Community bike parks. So what is a bike park? I'm taking the idea, I know y'all have a pump track in your plan. I am going to expand on exactly what a bike park is and how it fits in, and maybe share with you some other potential options, maybe not just for the Riverfront project, but potentially in other areas in the future. It's bike specific. It is a park designed for bicycles. It's fairly self-contained. It allows you to really take features that are naturally based, wood, rock, dirt, and integrate them into existing park infrastructure. And of course, to make a bike park, you would have more than one different elements, different types of biking facilities. What's, I think, standard even when we're looking at trails and trail systems is that natural surface bicycle access should be managed no differently than any other park or any other recreation facility. It needs law enforcement, it needs trash, it needs ingress and egress, it needs all of those things. What's great about a bike park is not only is it extremely family friendly, but it provides for an awesome opportunity for skill development, progression, for people to interact with people of all different levels. Whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, this idea of a bike park is not only spectator friendly and family oriented, but it's good for everybody to enjoy. The idea that it is contained and not 20 miles out in the woods is much easier to manage the risk. I know that's always something that we're concerned about. What I find from my perspective working with a lot of communities and revitalizing eyesores and areas that are unable to be used for anything else is that you can take a very odd shaped piece of property adjacent to existing parks or schools or ball fields and put a pump track in that can completely transform. Now this picture shows the exact transformation from what this looked like in Grand Rapids, Michigan to now it's just covered with kids. The only thing bad about this picture is the kid doesn't have a helmet on, but that's another problem. This is an example. Has anybody seen this picture before? Can anybody guess where this is? Not even a city, but can you tell where this is?
It's under an overpass.
Yes, it's under an overpass. It's under I-9 in Seattle, Washington. There's a report out that they spent over 6 figures in law enforcement just trying to manage the undesirables. We all know what that is and how that works. This was littered with invasive species. So when they cleared that out, working with the local Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance in the city, they now have a destination through community policing, all of those problems are gone. While they may be displaced somewhere else, they've made this an amazing asset that's now an international benchmark for ways to use spaces with creative options. There were only 30 purpose-built bike parks in the U.S. Just in the late 2000s. Now we're building 20 to 30 a year. Here's a really small scale picture of just something communities put in an area that was in the back of a ball field, just to give you some ideas. And I'm going to share a lot more pictures and design and renderings and things. So again, a bike park and the benefits are really about accommodating a wide range of abilities and skill sets. They're not for the Red Bull X Games teenager with their hair on fire doing backflips. They're for everybody. Now, if you have some of that even potentially illegally being built around your community and you know that exists, it's actually really good to embrace that and provide for that in certain situations. The idea that by providing the variety and the progression, you lead to this skills development, which really makes people feel better about themselves. It's exercise. It's actually a lot of work to ride around a pump track. It allows you to increase opportunities to get more people in your property, just like the trails are doing across the road. So I've already covered a few of these. They're fairly low cost compared to other types of recreational facilities. You can choose whether or not you do a pay-to-play model or fee-for-service, but they are controlled ingress and egress, so that is something that can be on the table. They're very simple, easy, and very interesting, and very spectator-friendly. So I talked about a bike park having more than one element, and then I'm going to go through some of the different elements. There are a few more, but you already have the single track across the street, so that's already covered. So here's one example of what a pump track looks like. This is actually in somebody's backyard that's a professional trail builder. So they can be very, there are some in Europe in areas where they have a very wet environment where they're paved or asphalt and very just immaculately landscaped. Pump tracks will be full of this. Children all day long. It's amazing to see how they bring them out of the woodwork. Dirt jumps or a progressive jump line that gets larger down the road are another aspect of a bike park. Here's a rendering of a scenario. You have your different lines. You have a very easy, you can roll this no problem. All of them, they don't have any gaps. So you have the ability for people to learn and watch others. And then you have some skills features, a little roller and then a log ride, and some elements to give people some other fun and challenge to play on. Technical skill development features are basically small components of natural surface or wood, rock, other things that you can see this instructor teaching here how to teach the youth how to balance and go through this rock. Really, this is designed to, just like some of the features that you would have out on the trail existing right across the street, you could implement and add some of these features to get people prepared before they get out there on the trail. Here's some different examples from very low skill to a very high level skill feature, which is a big wall ride. Flow trails are becoming very popular. The idea between a flow trail is basically a linear pump track. The idea is that you don't have to pedal. It's flow-y, so you're working with the contour of the land. There's a substantial amount of grading in there, but the idea is that by pumping and maneuvering your bike underneath you, you can work the contour and get all the way down. This is what it looks like when a little guy rides the pump track or rides the flow trail. So key elements to any bike park or any component of a bike park is signage, risk management signage, directional signage. Having a full signage plan, risk management plan is absolutely vital, just like you would with any other park here. Water is also needed for just maintenance and upkeep and manicuring these types of facilities. If you don't provide and control the spectator viewing, they will go wherever they want, and that could potentially be dangerous. So just like building in a new softball field, you want to make sure you have that so they're not just crossing where all the action's going on. Having a place for not only staff or volunteers, or staff, but also for volunteers to access tools gives them a chance to engage in the process, which I would pretty sure say it's going to happen in this facility. And then clear, signed, and also communicated emergency access with your local EMS and fire department. We highly recommend, and any builder will also recommend, that you have scheduled not only regular maintenance and inspections, but also annual inspections. And then a revision or maybe even a capital upgrade every 3 to 5 years just to keep it fresh and change it up. Plus sometimes you need that because it is just natural material and it may need to be tuned up a little bit. So cost, this is all everybody wants to know. Design can be less than $5, it can be way more, but anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. It's very synonymous to, if you're going to build a golf course, you don't use your landscape architect, you hire a professional that does golf courses. And in order to have something that holds up, that is as safe and controlled with different users as possible at different types of skill levels, and gives you the best bang for the buck, you definitely want to consult and utilize a professional bike park designer. I definitely will be very supportive in supporting you not only in the bid package development to make sure you get the right pre-quals and all that, but also recommending numerous companies that are specialized in these types of facilities. Construction can be anywhere from $5,000 to, right now, the biggest one is Valmont Bike Park. It is Valmont in Boulder, Colorado. The entire project was $4 million, but a lot of that was infrastructure, irrigation, mass grading. The actual bike park itself costs about $750,000 to $800,000. The Parklands of Florence Fork in Louisville has a proposal right now for a 120-acre park that'll be somewhere around the $1 million mark as well. So that'll be breaking ground this winter. Maintenance, I think you should potentially, depending on the agreement you have with your local stakeholders and skill set you have within your own staff, you should budget anywhere from 5 to 15% of the capital cost annually for maintenance. And a lot of that can be supplemented from in-kind tools and obviously volunteer labor, but if you were to take it all on, that's pretty much what you're looking at. So keys to success, owning the land is obviously important. Going through that battle, I'm sure, as you're aware, is not easy. Water, so if you don't have to run irrigation, it's already there. That can be huge. It'd save a lot of money. You need to have the basic amenities for any park. Ease of access, not just for parking and people once it's built, but also ease of access for construction. The location, you've already got that covered, and you've got a good one. The next one, community government support. We're having this conversation now to hopefully continue that. Spreading the word, in order for this to get used and be effective, you're going to want to make sure you have an adequate marketing plan, working with your community, your bike shops, and all the local groups to do that. And then, of course, working with all the stakeholders. So I just want to share with you a couple renderings of some of the work that a professional designer would give you. We have our own design firm if you were to choose to use ours. Here's a really great example of how a bike park can be tucked into existing infrastructure. So Anybody know what that is right there? Skate park. It's a big, expensive concrete skate park. This is a big school complex. Tennis, ball fields, everything. So they've got gravity-oriented flow trails, huge pump track, jump lines, cyclocross, which I don't know if you've heard of that. It's basically road biking road bikes on the grass. It's very popular in Europe, and Louisville hosted the Worlds, which is the first time it's ever going to happen in North America. So cyclocross is really getting popular. It's another way to add some additional components into your bike park. This is an example of one that I know has piqued some interest here for this project. This is what I like to call the T-bone or the dog bone. So you have the center, and you have a more beginner-friendly and youth-friendly track on one side. Then you have another set of lines on this side that has some different transitional lines. It's definitely for the more skilled riders. And then, of course, a skills loop or a course around the outside is great. It can be aggregate, raised, and have some of those alternative technical skill development features mixed in. So the details of this project, typically we're building pump tracks, just the pump track, around 200 feet by 200 feet. It can be a little bit smaller, it can be a little bit larger, it can be not square. It's totally up to the site, but that's an average. These are all approximations. 1,500 cubic yards of a quality soil clay composition. There is a recipe that is absolutely required to ensure that the development of this type of facility lasts. So the dirt is really imperative to be right. Total cost of this project, depending on some of the elements I mentioned below, anywhere from 30 to 50K. That includes everything: design, labor, equipment, soil, all of that. Now, if you have a good flat site with no mass grading, you have access to dirt, and of course, access to getting the dirt in and out where they don't have to spend a lot of labor hauling the material in, so the trucks can dump the material right there. You can cut a lot of costs. There's also a hybrid build where you can work with your local community through the contract actually, and city staff and park staff to have the builders do education and training to make sure that you have a quality force to be able to maintain that facility into perpetuity. If you have major grading issues, irrigation issues, all those things, it can jack up the price beyond 50, but that's something that can be discussed with your developer or designer. So the process, you've already got a few of these steps done, but you have the vision already within your master plan. You go through the design steps where you take that rendering that I just showed you here, and you get into the true schematics. You get into the actual construction drawings. This is just a concept. There's another step, which would be this design step here. That's where you have maybe some stakeholder involvement regarding the community, which I'm sure you all do in a lot of projects that you have underway. And then you have putting together the instruction documents with engineering, permits, all those pieces. Then, of course, you got to get into making it happen. So installation and construction. And then there are some post-construction services that you can contract, like training and other pieces, annual upkeep and visits. So there's a lot of those that can be added into your bid package if that's something you so desire. So just want to let you know, it is more than just digging in the dirt. I want you to think of this pump track as a park, just like your entire facility and any type of national service bike facility, and know that IMBA is here to support you and the local chapter in achieving any of your goals in regards to national service trails. So now, if I didn't answer your questions, let me see if I can
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Williamson?
I have some for Paul when he gets ready, but now you did a nice job explaining. You made me understand what a pump track is now. So.
Great. And of course, if something comes up after the fact, feel free to reach out to Paul or myself. I'll be glad to get you anything I can if something comes up. So thank you for your time, Commissioners. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Paul, I believe you're back up.
Yes. Questions?
Yes, I have some. Now, the land that you're looking at, if you'll go ahead and explain kind of what your thoughts are about that.
The land we're looking at is next to the Barron River by the College Street Bridge. Right now it's just an empty landfill. There's some entertainment-oriented businesses nearby that are sort of controversial. we'd sort of like to take that land back and bring it to the city. Personally, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. We have awesome riverfront facilities and bicycle facilities throughout the city. When I came here, there was absolutely nothing, and it was a huge disappointment me personally. And I know this can be great for Bowling Green, especially given that Western Kentucky's here. So putting this and taking back the riverfront right there would be ideal. We have future plans, of course, for the Whitewater Park, which you all have already paid for the plans for that, but that's other day. This is really the next step with this piece of land. This is what would really plant the flag and start taking it back from the criminals and degenerates that currently go down to that piece of land. We've already had some estimates with, I forgot exactly who it was in the city, but to actually get the lines run to get irrigation put there. We have quotes for that. We've also spoken with local businesses that are willing to donate dirt and equipment to make this happen. Excuse me. So I think that we can, like the mountain bike trail, pay for this generally privately. Maintenance and upkeep will, for the most part, be done through the Kentucky Mountain Bike Association. Any other questions, Mr. Waltrip?
Kevin, what other ideas, are there any other ideas that have surfaced about the use of that land down there?
Are we talking about the landfill?
Yeah.
I remember at one time we had discussions with WKU about putting their soccer complexes there. But that didn't go anywhere. There's some environmental covenants, other than not, Jeff, that have to be given courtesy.
Yeah, that was my next question, the roadblocks to doing something like that.
Jeff, are you aware of any,
Can't penetrate the cab.
or Matt?
Help
Help me understand, I haven't seen the plan, what they want to do.
I can speak generally, and Matt could provide you plenty more detail if you want that. But when we close a landfill, we have a cap over the top of it. So that is to provide some level of imperviousness and to protect the waste material underneath. So what would need to take place, we couldn't dig into that, but it would need to go up.
Which actually fits this project in that we're talking about adding a lot of dirt. So.
What project are we talking about? I'm at a loss. I
I
saw a conceptual, this is cool kind of thing, but do we have a specific Bowling Green complex project that has been presented here? I've never seen it.
No. Again, what this came out of was a conversation that a number of people had during the stroll we had down there. And I was not aware of a lot of these things. I knew we had talked about the whitewater rafting. Until then, I don't think that I was aware of a desire to put what I now know as a pump track in over there. And some of the people talk about, again, that's the next logical stage to what's happening down there. And all this is very conceptual. But again, when was it you were here last time?
I believe it was about 2 years ago, and all this was presented, the pump track and everything with it. I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you, I don't remember much about that part of it. But again, I think it's important if we're going to try to develop an area down there that we keep that in front of us. But again, if we can take and look at some things, that land has looked like that for a long time down there, and it's not very aesthetically appealing as you come into Bowling Green from that way. And there's been so many improvements in that area of town that something built on that property, some use for that property, for that public property, seems to be reasonable to me. And so that's how this conversation began. And I believed at that time when we were talking that Melinda and Rick, Melinda may have been on then, but Rick wasn't at that time. So give everyone a chance to be on the same page with this stuff.
And I believe that we can do this fully with private funding. That is my goal. And with my political beliefs as well, I'd like to see this mostly done with private funds. And I'd like to introduce Chairman of the Kentucky Mountain Bike Association, the local chapter. He'd like to say a word.
If I can say one thing real quick, I don't think it should be an issue, and make sure everybody understands we don't own that landfill. But I think as long as we devote it to park purposes, we're okay.
Yeah.
But it's actually owned by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We just are allowed to use it.
I'd also like to note that actually the Greenways does have a path already constructed on top of that landfill.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you recall,
On the
and
edge.
this rendering up top here is what we're looking after for the pump track, or something very similar. And so the current gravel greenway that goes around that area, if you can imagine, would be all the way around that perimeter of the picture. And so inside that whole grassy area would be like the start mound, and then your trail spinoffs of the pump track lines around it. So it would all be contained inside that greenway section. And even the perimeter trail that you see for the beginner pump track runs would be inside that gravel greenway there. Eddie Hanks, if you're familiar with TPM, he did the landfill work there back when that was done. He also has contacted me several times, and we've chatted, and he wants to spearhead all efforts he can put forth for the project, and he thinks that's just an exceptional idea to be able to bring, 100 truckloads of dirt on top of what's already a landfill. So you're increasing it even further, and he really would like to see that area continue to progress as it is now with families and so forth. So he's showing strong support and wants to be involved in the project as well.
Now, you currently have a track next to Weldon Peak Park.
Correct. So it's on the other side of Old Louisville Road there. We call it the Low Hollow Trail.
Yeah.
That's the trail that goes around through Weldon Peak Park.
What would be your plans for that?
The connecting of the two would be through the Greenway. So you'd have the single track natural surface trail that then connects right at the kiosk to the paved Greenway that comes up on top of Old Louisville Road. And there's already a crossing on the other side that's for the gravel Greenway. So then we would set up some kind of official street crossing to get from one park to the other. There's already an entrance into the gravel Greenway from the paved Greenway. So what we would need to do is have a street crossing. Paul at one time had mentioned there was an idea of using the bridge area.
Currently with the Whitewater Park plans, the Old Louisville Road Bridge, there was proposed to have a greenway connecting underneath that bridge along the bank of the river, which would be ideal to get people down the riverfront. And I'm personally working on grants through the greenways to do that, and I just think that's a matter of time before we get the funding. But right now, there's currently greenways crossings in place to connect the two parks.
Chris, how many people are involved in the association locally?
We're up to 52. And that includes Owensboro all the way to Bowling Green and places in between. And we doing a trail up at called Briar Creek up at Nolan Lake State Park. So we'll have probably another 10 miles there come December. The Mammoth Cave Trail opens up here in just a few short weeks. So we'll have, counting Low Hollow Trail and Bowling Green, we'll have 25 miles of natural surface trail where we didn't have any of that before. And also did the trails in Owensboro, the Ben Halls Park. It's a 10-mile trail system there too. So we're trying to make our area, and not just Bowling Green, but Bowling Green obviously in the center, our region, our slice of Imba pie, as they say. We're trying to make it a destination where people want to come ride, and they'll drive, use the hotels, and camp out and whatnot. And we've seen a lot of increase of growth. I mean, every time I go to the park now, I count at least 15 people hiking, biking, or something like that. And that's not just here, but the other trails as well.
Mr. City Manager, are
Yes.
we still monitoring this landfill? Is that over with?
So
Pardon?
over
What?
with.
Okay. What? When you talk about construction, other than what's already there, which is the outside, when you talk about construction on that landfill, even though we're building it up to a higher elevation, are we opening up some doors that could cause some problem as far as the landfill is concerned? In other words, could it start leaking again?
Certainly. And essentially anything that we do down there could cause a problem. We do have a small problem there now that we could use some fill for. And I've worked with this group, spoken with members of this group before, and worked a little bit with the Division of Waste Management and floated the idea out there for them. And as they mentioned, they were very positively met with that news. the short version of the answer to your question is anything that we do could potentially cause something adverse to happen. But my personal opinion, looking at it and what they're talking about doing, I think there's some mutually beneficial aspects to it. They can fill in some low spots for us, and as long as they stay in the airspace, as long as they stay above our current cap, they shouldn't hurt us.
How much land is exactly down there? I don't know that I've ever known.
I don't know off the top of my head. 11 or 12 acres, somewhere in that range.
So everything would have to be built on top of what we have there now?
No excavation at all.
Gotcha.
Caps are sketchy, and as they get older, they get even sketchier about exactly how thick they are. So determining depth from the grass that you see to where the waist is tough to do.
Not going to hit rock.
Well, there's not going to be much rock.
That's every place else we do things here. You're worried about the rock.
Well,
Won't
we
be
know it's a
worried about the
landfill.
rock.
We know it's a landfill front to back.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Denning's mentioning, we do have an interceptor trench in place already. That was in response to an incident several years ago, but that incident seems to have passed, and we've not had any issues with that for at least 7 years.
And if I could jump in on response to that, well, I'm not the guy on the ground that handles a lot of the permits, the construction. I'm the director that helps set them up and make the relationships. We have a great deal of experience in working with above grade projects on landfills that I know have been successful in numerous states. So definitely there's experience in dealing with these, and I think their previous investigation will prove that if we were to take some logical steps, we can mitigate any potential issues regarding any below grade disturbance.
Paul, I have another question for you.
Yes.
You referred to being able to raise private funds and things like that, but tell us specifically from the city, you want obviously the ability to use that land is what you want from us.
Our main goal would be the land. The only water can be trucked in under some circumstances. From what I've been told, it's preferred to have lines run. I believe around where Tattletales is where the water line stops. I forgot the exact person we communicated with, but we did have a quote to get the line run from there to where the pump track would be. We'd also float. I know we'd have to get Corps engineers' permission, but like how you water some or irrigate some of the golf courses, be to run lines from the Barren River to sprinklers or water sources to keep the pump track dry or wet. So there's different methods to do that. If we could actually go through the Corps and get it set up like the golf courses where we could irrigate through the Barren River water, I think that would be ideal. But I'm willing to explore and research anything you all would like to see.
Well, what I would, and I'm not sure the level of support, but what I would like to see is some information with some cost involved, some obviously not a design that you talked about right now, but just what do we need to begin this. And again, I would see that this is a project that would be continually built on. You would start, I would think, you would start with what you just basically have to have. But again, I go back to that piece of property down there. Something needs to be done with that property. And this seems like the best project that I've heard to go down there. Also, we would need probably you to go before the Parks Advisory Board to speak with those folks. I would like to see, I won't speak for the others, I'd like to see some type of interest. What is the interest of the public? And hopefully that this will kind of spur some conversation in the public as well to see if indeed there is enough support to have a facility like this. So those are some of the things that I'd like to see, and I'd like to see them written in a plan, going from it's a grassy area now to exactly what's needed.
We can provide that. And I'd also like to say, as far as providing the machinery and the dirt, one of my ideas that we've done at the Low Hollow Trail is if somebody provides the dirt, just put up a small, 5x6 billboard with their logo on it, just as a thank you for donating. This was donated by and made possible, and it's sort of a mutual benefit. Gets their name out in the community, and it helps the community with the donations. I think that's the best way to do projects like this without spending city funds.
What are your thoughts for parking with US 31W being right there beside this?
From my understanding, we of course have Mitch McConnell Riverwalk on the other side, which provides limited parking. There's of course Weldon Pete, but that's a little bit farther away. I believe it's Matt, correct? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he had suggested putting along the access road, the College Street Bridge, on that land that's not on landfill, but put parking spots all up and down there. That would be the most feasible spot because you don't really want to put those on the landfill. The other idea I had as far as parking goes, especially if later phases such as the Whitewater Park were to get developed, or we could do this now, where the greenway goes down into our land, the city's land adjacent to Weldon Pete Park, where the Low Hollow Trail is. There's a greenways that goes down into the park. I think that could be turned into a road, and at the bottom of it, in that big open field, put parking there. Just gravel lots.
And also you have parking at Tattletales. Get rid of Tattletales and just have a parking spot right there, just right by the park.
Tattletales, what's that?
Any other questions?
I do know there are a lot of biking enthusiasts in our community, and that particular area is at the end of what we're calling Heritage Trail, and people are going to be riding their bikes through the town, so through the city of Bowling Green. So it might be a viable option for that.
With the greenways, we just did population projections on where we want to have the master plan connect, and basically the growth in Bowling Green is going to be coming from the south end, where a lot of residential dwellings are going to be made. The idea is to have the greenways connect from there through Western to the riverfront through the Heritage Trail. So it is in the city's master plan to sort of connect to the riverfront. And I know from being from a city with a very powerful riverfront that used to be a landfill of how powerful that change can be. And as Andy had brought up earlier, a lot of it is public self-policing, so we'd be saving, even to a degree, the police force manpower on patrolling just by actually having people down there looking. I know there's a homeless problem underneath the old Louisville Bridge right now that has sort of been the elephant in the room in that area. And I believe with the development of the greenways and this, that would self-police that to a degree as well.
Where would they go?
Excellent question. A lot of times, as Andy had said about with the pump track underneath that expressway on, I believe, I-9, you're misplaced people to other locations. It's one of the sad facts of just how things are.
One of the main reasons we're having you all come tonight again is to see if there is support for and what I see as the next step is to give us some concrete information, give us some data so that we can make a better decision somewhere, in the upcoming months. But I also know that with ideas, again, if they're not continually, if someone's not driving that idea, it goes by the wayside. And then you're sitting here 3 years from now, just talking about how cool it is or whatever the term would be. But again, I don't know what the support among the other members are for the next step, but I, for one, would like to see a next step.
And I can provide those cost plans. And the Bowling Green Riverfront Foundation actually commissioned an economic impact study for this project as a whole about, I believe it was last winter, correct, Clinton? And I can provide that with that, and we have it broken down for each project on what it's projected to be. And I believe the limits of the study were only about 25 to 50 miles around Bowling Green. We're really going to be drawing more people. Actually, one of the Bowling Green Daily News articles about the Low Hollow Trail was upgraded the USA Today, and they called this future potential bike hub and outdoor hub in the U.S. So there's a lot of potential here. And I mean, personally, just of how I've seen Louisville grow and how Bowling Green's recently overtaken Owensboro in growth, and just knowing how I-65 goes through here and being between Louisville and Nashville, I believe eventually, I'm talking a little farther out, that Bowling Green will probably surpass Lexington size just geographically how it is. I believe this is a great step to poise the city long-term strategically to grow into a better place for families to draw to, so you'll have more companies like Fruit of the Loom come.
I think
Or
they're
Or
here
no,
already.
or, correct.
What would be helpful if we had a rendering or vision statement, some narrative so that we can make some judgments? Be nice to have a site plan about what you would possibly like to see this become. Then the connective tissue to the rest of the park. Then possibly an estimate about what it would cost. Then a governance model about who would actually govern this and what our role would be. In one document, that would be helpful
Yes.
for us, because we're going to a retreat and we're all trying to remember. I never heard the term pump track until today. So if you told us, we don't remember it.
Okay, no, I completely understand that.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who.
I didn't know what a pump track was.
Yeah, I know it's a sort of foreign term for you all, and
Yeah.
I was mostly going to touch on the pump track today, but since you all might be going on that retreat and wanting more information about our concept as a whole, I can put it together. Something else I've talked about with other people is potentially selling the naming rights for the landfill and the land of adjacent to Weldon Peak Park, and if the county was on board changing the name of Weldon Peak Park, I did some research. You could sell the naming rights. You'd probably do a long agreement of like 10 years, but right down to about 50 to 100 grand a year to sell the naming rights for a park that size. And that would potentially help supplement the cost of the overall project if we wanted to move forward with that. And it would alleviate the bad connotations that go along with Weldon Peak Park. 2 years ago, I did a Google search and put it up here on Weldon Peak Park and what it brought up, and I am sure you all know what it says. And the only difference today, if you do a Google search for Weldon Peak Park, is you have positive stories about the Low Hollow Trail down there, intermixed with the bad of the past. So we believe that we can move forward with that.
Paul, let me probably end this conversation, or unless someone else has something that you're excited. Being a young person involved in projects like this, I find very exciting, refreshing, and I think as a community, just the idea of talking about what the future holds for our young people and how this fits in, I think, again, is very refreshing. I thank you for that.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it, and I'll have those documents to you in the next coming weeks.
Let me just ask one short question here. Are you suggesting that we sell the naming rights of city property, which the landfill is?
Yes, that would be more long-term. A project on the scale of, say, the Whitewater Park will, I believe in a mixture. I believe that some grant money, some public funding, charging user fees can all go together. But it's been done in other cities, given it is a little rare. But you could have, I'm just putting this out here, I haven't talked to anybody, Camping World, Houchins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They pay a yearly fee to have a billboard saying this is this park. On Google, when somebody searches, it's this park. So you're having people coming from as far away as Atlanta and Chicago to such and such company park. There's huge value with that. I was personally a marketing major at U of L, and I mean, just how this reaches out to companies, I just know personally, as a small business owner as well, this has residual value with selling those naming rights, and it would alleviate the bad connotations that go along with Weldon Peak Park. Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you all.
We appreciate all of you coming to help us understand a little bit better. You gonna get involved with them? No, I'm talking about Brent. Are you gonna get involved with them too? All right. Next item is revisit our local bidder preference policy, which is set to expire in October.
I think you gave a good preamble to that. Back in 2011, we passed the local preference policy to give bidders up to $5,000 preference if they requested it under certain rules. That sunsets shortly, and so you all asked for us to establish some time to discuss it, and today's been the date. We've chosen to discuss it, and Kate's going to lead on the matter. I think there's some materials in your packet about the history and the performance under this so far.
Okay. I just want to briefly kind of go over, we had set back several months ago when we came to the board and presented to you our actual purchasing process. And we talked about getting more participants to be registered bidders to do business with the city and increase that potential pool of bidders. And we talked about that our purchasing values are to be maintain a competitive process, have equal access, have a fair opportunity, and then get the best products for the best value. In our purchasing process, we currently have established levels by which departments will have to provide additional information to justify purchasing. And you can see anywhere between $1 to $2,500. It only takes one quote, basically, to purchase. Anything over $2,500, you have to have a minimum of 2 quotes, and then it goes up from there. What we're talking about in terms of the local preference, the way it was originally set up, which was 2 years ago, is with regard to the $20,000 and above, and those require a sealed competitive bid process. All the others, anything below $20,000 are quotes. It's an informal process where departments can go out and obtain 3 separate quotes from 3 different companies, and if they can't get 3 companies that offer the same product, at least have made that attempt to get 3 separate quotes and have some sort of justification or written commentary as to what they've done to try to procure that information. And of course we have the approval process. So anything under $5,000 is actually done at the department level. It does not go through central purchasing. Anything over $5,000 would then go through central purchasing. And then of course anything that's at the $20,000 and above, again doing the sealed bid process, does involve the purchasing agent at all parts of that process. So that's just a quick overview. So we're specifically looking today at our local bidder preference policy. The local preference policy currently relates to the purchase of goods, which includes office supplies, equipment, vehicles, clothing, any printed materials, and it's items, again, that are greater than $20,000. And then it also has a definition of a local business. They have to be registered to do business in Bowling Green. They must have a physical place address in here, have properly zoned property, must be in good standing with the city, and then must pay a minimum of $2,500 in taxes, fees, or withholdings to the city during the previous year. So that's how they're qualified to be a local vendor. We implemented the policy back in October of 2011. So we've had about a 2-year trial period. As Mr. DeFebo mentioned, it expires October in 2013. Of the last 22 months or so, we had 92 bids that went out. Anything over $20,000 we put out for competitive sealed bid. Of those 92, there were actually 28 that were for goods, the actual purchase of goods or materials. And of those 28, we only had 5 bids that actually had local preference apply. So about 18%. And of those 5 bids, the city did pay an additional $6,207 to purchase locally. And again, just a brief listing of those items. I will note that the Microsoft Exchange is actually pending approval, so that hasn't been approved just yet. That'll come forth, I believe, in September. The dollar values are not terribly significant. Obviously, the street sweeper was the largest difference that we paid, and our policy does allow up to $5,000 currently. So that's certainly something I know has been questioned whether or not we want to change. So it's a 5% up to $5,000 preference that's provided. Now we've got some pros and cons. Obviously, when you're looking at purchasing locally, that's loyalty to your local companies, that's keeping the tax dollars here locally, that's encouraging local economy, job creation, all of that is good. And then of course the local vendors do have an advantage because they have an opportunity for a quicker response and therefore lower costs. You wouldn't have shipping costs or outside labor type costs involved. And we want to encourage local businesses to participate and to stay local. Cons, some disadvantages obviously to local preference is it does discourage competition to a degree. It could potentially reduce our bidding pool. There may be outside businesses that choose not to bid because they feel that the city's always going to go with a local bidder. It could also lead to potentially higher costs, which would be an increase in cost on the taxpayer. If we are staying local and there is a price difference, then we're paying a little bit more. So it's a level at which you're comfortable with paying a little bit more. It also encourages the reciprocal preference for other cities. So Glasgow may implement a local preference policy, and it may be in competition to us. So that's some things we need to look at. And then, of course, there's also the potential for legal challenges and protests, because companies who may have had the lowest bid and they're a responsible bidder may file a protest because we're choosing to go with maybe someone who isn't the lowest bidder, but because they're local. So those are some issues that could come up. So where do we go from here?
Did you tell them that it has to be requested?
We do currently. It's in the policy, which was approved by municipal order, that any local company that currently wants to receive the local preference must request that preference in writing at the time that their bid is submitted. So they have to tell us, and they have to tell us in writing when they submit their bid. Now, we have a way where we can make that process easier on the potential bidders by providing them with a document in the bid pack that they can fill out and make it simple. We haven't done that yet, but if we move forward, that's probably where we'll go with that. They have to be, the bidder, the vendor themselves have to prove that they qualify. It would be more work on staff if we have to go and track all that information down. So they have to prove to us that they are qualified. And by doing so, we can have a form that they can fill out and sign off on that they do hereby certify that they are qualified, and provide for us some basic information that can help justify that application.
In the case of the street sweeper, which has brought all of this to the discussion we are having today, we paid $4,000 over what the lowest bidder was.
Yes.
In normal circumstances would have gotten the bid. And apparently the low bidder met all of our qualifications.
Factually, that's correct, yes.
Mm-hmm.
This passed unanimously back in 2011.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. But I don't think nobody was thinking about, whether it's a local bidder or whether it's someone else, $4,000 over the lowest bid is a pretty good little hunk of money. Mm-hmm. And I think 5% in the initial thought process of this, we had in mind $400 or $500, $1,000, $1,500, not $4,000 or $5,000 over the lowest bid. I don't know what the answer is tonight, but I think we've got to do something about that without any hesitations. And I think that some of the other commissioners here have some ideas, but I think personally we've got to do something about that.
Now, I know Commissioner Williams was not here, but back in 2011, we did do a local vendor survey to get some input before we implemented the policy on how they felt about such a policy to be in place. And so within your handout, and just briefly I'll go over, we sent out to 125 local businesses that had been registered with the city over a 3-year period, or somewhere within that time frame had registered. And then we submitted a bid that was out for about 2 weeks or so, or a survey that was out for about 2 weeks. We had 32 responses, so about 25% response rate, which isn't bad. It's just above the margin of usually a greater than 20% is what you're looking for. And then we did have basically, does your business fit the definition? Those that we had participated in this process, overwhelmingly they did fit the definition. How many would be in favor? Virtually everyone, over 80%. Concern that other cities would create a local vendor policy. There wasn't really any concern of that. So maybe that disadvantage that was mentioned earlier may not necessarily apply, but it's something to be out there.
Did that happen, Katie, anywhere that you know of
I don't.
in this area?
I don't offhand.
Not cities, of course, Kentucky did.
Yeah.
And Kentucky had obviously done theirs before we even approached that subject. We asked them about the 5% up to the $5,000 limit, if they were in support of that. Most were. Was there any concern about competition being hindered? Majority of them did not think so. If not, a local vendor, would they accept a local vendor being awarded a bid? And majority of them did agree that that would be okay with them. And then we also had asked a question as a possible option, so that the city wasn't paying more to stay locally, but to would a vendor be willing to match the lowest bid within certain parameters? And majority of them were maybe, but you also had over 40% that said yes, they would. If given the opportunity and they were the local company, they would be willing to match that bid, so that we wouldn't necessarily pay more to stay local. And so that's just kind of going over that brief survey that we had.
Katie, one thing that, and I know I did a little bit of work on this with a rough idea that I had come up with on to actually expand the program. Mm-hmm. Because what I'd like to see us do is evaluate on every purchase that we make, whether that's $1 or whether that's $1 million. But with that said, I think that it's important that we try to help our local business as much as possible, but they have to have their pencil sharp too. So I came up with a sliding scale suggestion that allowed a preference from anywhere from 10% down to 1.8%. It's a little bit, and I'm not married to these numbers by any stretch of the imagination, but my thought process was, as Joe said earlier, $4,000 or $5,000 is a lot of money, but on an item that's $275,000, that's not out of reason that a local bidder would be that close. But for where we were with that item, $5,000 was a little bit, I think, out of reason. What I came up with here was to allow a 10% local preference on items that range in price from $1 to $1,000. And that would allow a maximum discount or preference of $100. So I think that gets it kind of in a ballpark where we want it to be. It still gives local preference. It gives our local people the opportunity to bid and to say, you should buy it here, and I'm going to give you as good a price as I can. And if it makes sense to us to buy it like that, I think that's a good idea. But to just blanket throw out a 5% number on everything, I think was a little bit dangerous.
Well, obviously we had capped it at the $5,000, but you're absolutely correct. We've only addressed it with 5 bids, so we haven't had a lot of experience with it. We haven't had to pay a great deal of money, the street sweeper being the most significant. If I could, though, in addressing the suggestion that we do all purchasing under the local preference policy, there's a couple things that we need to be aware of. First of all, in just purchase orders alone, in FY 2012, we issued over 8,281. Of that 8,281, only 290 of those actually met the threshold for the purchasing agent to review and approve. So we're talking about 96.5% of our purchasing is done at the department level. So we're looking at a logistical challenge, if you will, to enforce compliance with a local preference. And then how do you apply that local preference when you're purchasing office supplies, for instance? You're just purchasing a box of pencils. Are we going to suggest that the department has to purchase locally? Or if they find the possibility of a purchase online that's less expensive, but it's not local? So at what point do we want to kind of address some of that? I think because of the volume of purchasing that we do, and that's just purchase orders, that's not even direct purchasing, that's not procurement card purchasing, that's just POs. So there's a lot more purchasing that goes on. And departments do have the ability to purchase on a procurement card up to $2,500 in one transaction and up to $5,000 per month. And we do a lot of purchasing through the procurement process because it's efficient. So again, there's some different varying levels that we want to consider in terms of the policy and how that would apply to all purchasing that we do, if we were to apply it across the board. And if we were also to apply it for more than just goods or materials, if we apply it to services, and we're looking at professional services, and I'm just going to throw out engineering for an example. When you do a lot of professional services bids, you have generally an evaluated bid process. Price is an important element of that, but so is experience, just having the proper qualified individuals and that sort of thing involved. So there's different weights applied. In our current policy, we do have, if we did purchase any goods at an evaluated process, we have a point system, so they get an additional 3 points applied under the current policy. So would we want to address that? And do we want to expand it beyond goods and materials to include services, professional services, engineering, architectural? Do we want it to include construction projects where you have a construction manager that may bid the whole thing and they sub out all these different levels? Again, these are just things that staff have to consider as we consider a policy like that. So I just want to bring those things out so we can talk about them.
Good question.
Can I add one more to that?
Yeah.
One of the bigger concerns is this decentralized system. You want to go back to the criteria we had that was established on the old one? One of the more difficult thing, and it's easy to control through Maryland when it's centralized, is who is a vendor in the city of Bowling Green. Everybody will claim to be a local vendor. It doesn't apply to someone who has a Bowling Green address. It has to be in the city. Mm-hmm. And to ask, it's not impossible, but a lot of these $50, $100 purchases, the decision whether or not that particular vendor is in the county or in the city becomes time consuming. Maryland does it now because she has a group of registered vendors. Here, if we have to determine if on Cave Mill a vendor is or is not in the city, that becomes a more difficult thing and time consuming thing for a small purchase. That's another complication. We think the idea of going with a graduated thing is great if we could adjust it from 0 to 100 or something higher than that, because it becomes more counterproductive in terms to verify local vendorship in the city. With Maryland, it's easy. We know there's 450 people who are in the city who meet the criteria. Here, this is almost becomes calling around to figure out what proof we can determine if they're in the city of Bowling Green.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may be exactly right on what you where you want to start this thing, or some things that you want to take out of it. I threw this down to kind of give you just an example of what a sliding scale would look like, where that we wouldn't be caught with a discount that was going to be so enormous that it would be more in line with the expectations of how much somebody local might miss a bid on a particular item. You know, I look back at like the vehicles that were just bid, and when you had Greenwood Ford, I think it was, that got the bid on a van, and the difference was $249.
Right.
Well, $249 on a van is pretty doggone close.
Yeah.
I can see that kind of a discount, but $5,000 would have been way out of reason.
A sliding scale is a great idea.
We're totally for that.
Yeah.
Just what level?
I think it needs to be tweaked. I mean, that's, I told you, this is rough.
If we were to change, like for instance, your line 8 here that starts at 15,000, if we could keep that at 20, but still along the same lines, you have the 4% down to the 1.8. I mean, you're still, or even change that to 5% down to whatever percentage. If you're comfortable with those dollar values, then that's certainly something that would be a good enhancement to this policy.
Well, I know a lot of the commissioners haven't had a chance to
Joe
review
hasn't,
this
I'm
yet.
sorry.
So.
Joe wants to speak.
Mayor, I would suggest that the staff take the time, whether it's between now and Friday, it doesn't bother me at all if this goes past that, to sit down, develop what they think we need. And, you know, all of us agree that $4,000 over whatever it was, we don't like it. Let's just go from there and maybe bring something back to us as to what you as the staff feel is comfortable. You have to work with it every day. We don't. We see it after it gets here. And because we can sit here all day long and get 99 different versions of what should take place. I think all of us agree we're not interested in paying local vendors a whole lot of money, and I think Rick says that in his document, over and above what somebody else bids on. They've got to get their pencil sharp just like anyone else. And having a preface shouldn't give them a thought process that, hey, we're going to get it, we're local. No, you got to get your pencil sharp. And that's my thoughts.
Linda?
I would just like to see this information and us discuss it more during our retreat in September.
Do we want to make that retreat a full day? Because we're adding a lot to that agenda.
What day is that?
It's September 24th.
On a Friday, right?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Yes, it's a Tuesday morning.
As long as we can start at 9 a.m., we'll be fine.
9 o'clock. It's lunchtime.
I've got like 5-6 things already on the, so.
But I just think this is
it.
really important, and it'd be
yes.
a good item for the retreat.
Okay.
I also agree with what Joe and Linda said about it. Do it on the 24th.
We do have some ideas. If Kate could go to her presentation, chart number 2, slide number 2. If you were asking me, I would think it would start at the 10,000 because the department head has to be involved, and he needs to make sure that the person's local.
Yeah.
We don't want 150 different, what they call PEOs?
POVs.
POPs out there responsible for verifying that Pete's on the city and Joe isn't. But a department head, that's his responsibility. So in my mind, the natural place to start minimally is the 10,000 and above. If you're asking me off the cuff what that should be, and have it graduated.
Now currently, just obviously as you know, the 10,000 to 20,000 is not a formal quoting process. It's an informal process. The department has some leeway with how they contact individuals to get quotes. Now we can make that more of a formal quoting process and do it through our website like we do our competitive sealed bidding process. We've done a few quotes that way, particularly in Parks and Rec. We've gotten some really great responses from that. But it's more involved. It does have Marilyn more involved in the process. And so it will be, it'll get more competition because we'll have it out, we'll send it out to everyone who is a registered bidder on our process, so there is more fair, equal opportunity aspect to that. But again, it's a lot more in labor intensive, if you will, to do that, to send it out and have to wait a certain time period because it would be a minimum of 7 days to have that out there. So it's not the quick turnaround that departments currently have available to them.
It might also remove or help to remove any perception too that
Yes.
that department head is only getting quotes from who he wants to get quotes from.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we
So-
have used it before.
But you don't want to get a phone call from somebody in the community, the clerk over in such and such didn't call me.
Right.
And that clerk might not even know that, but JB, for example, I feel comfortable with him taking that responsibility,
Exactly.
especially if it's a higher number purchase.
So that's certainly something we can look at. To go back real quick, to address an example with respect to the street sweeper, that was a $164,000 purchase that we made. The lowest bid was around $155,000. But if you're looking at line 13, just as you have here, just for an example, if you're looking at line 13, where $140,000 to $180,000, you would apply a 2%
Correct.
preference to that. We're looking at no more than the $3,600.
Right.
It's still up there in a dollar value, but it's not as high as the $4,000 that we did pay. Is that something that would be acceptable to the board at a limit like that?
Meaning having a graduated scale. If we can
Yes.
start with that acquiescence by you, then we can work out a number.
And I will tell you, based on that, if we did a 2%, the local preference may not have ended up being the case, the fault, if I get this out. The
Wasn't
local
that-
vendor may not have actually won that bid because the 2% would have been, could have been less
Correct.
than what is eligible. So the low bidder at $155,000 could have still received that bid. If we're only looking at a 2% difference for a preference. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? I'm not
Yeah,
sure if
the
I got that out
difference,
right.
that difference was 410350, right?
Yes.
I would,
Only thing, I told Rick when we discussed this that the concept I do think I like. These other things that we need to be given information on and doing it the 24th sounds good, but the graduated, to answer your question, yes.
If you could tell us you like the graduated
Yes.
methodology, we can fill in the rest of it and have something that's workable. That would be a nice start for us.
yes.
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 Okay, we'll make it work.
Okay. Any other discussion about this? Any other changes to the policy that you'd like to consider while we're talking? You're just, at this point, we're just looking at the graduated schedule in terms of percent value and then the top dollar amount that we would pay out above
I
for
like
local.
the idea of taking it back and taking care of those department heads too.
Okay, taking it down to the $10,000 threshold, doing more of a formal quoting process for that level?
Still keep the
Okay.
2,000, still keep the 2,000 prior fiscal year payments, because I'm not sure how this
The,
will fit on
Yes.
that.
yeah, the eligibility for
Definition of
qualifying
a
to be
vendor.
yeah,
Mhm.
registered vendor.
We're most concerned about the argumentation of that we're a local person. That wasn't the intent. It was the city of Bowling Green. We don't want to be real parochial, but this
Yes,
is
we do. That's the whole
Okay.
purpose of the program.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to increase that $2,500 amount, or do you want to leave it the same?
We'll just think about it. Let us think about it and work on it between now and September.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it, and on the 24th, make some decisions.
All right. Sounds good. You still have obviously plenty of time. Stays in effect till October 18th, so.
All right, anything else, or are there any other issues to come before the commission? Thank you for your presentation and the work on it. We'll see you back at 7 o'clock.